Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast that we call Heroes Like You, where we discover the lives of people who have done extraordinary things, learn about their lives, what struggles they've been able to overcome, and discover that they are just like you and I. My name is Joe Belliston, and today we have the privilege of hearing from one of my heroes, World War II hero Gail Halvorsen, the candy bomber. He talks about his time growing up on the farm and the lessons he learned from that, and how those lessons have helped him throughout his life. He talks about his time during and after World War II, where he was flying planes in and out of Germany, literally saving the lives of the citizens of Germany. He talks about how gratitude, service, and forgiveness can heal the wounds of war, and how those attributes can literally change lives. He also talks a lot about hope, and how without hope, the soul dies. You know, there are a lot of historians out there who say that Gail Halvorsen and the things that he did during the Berlin airlift and the candy bomb very possibly prevented World War III. And during our conversation, I asked him about it, and he kind of brushed it off. He's a very, very humble man. He's 97 years old and still just as energetic as I am. I was able to sit with him in his home with his daughter Denise and just had a wonderful time learning from this great man. He is so generous, so kind, so gracious. It was a real privilege being able to get to know him and learn from him. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the candy bomber, Gail Halvorsen. Well, Colonel Halvorsen, thank you so much for taking time to be with us and share your stories and your experiences with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor to be with you and be asked to be interviewed.
Well, it's truly an honor, and I mean that sincerely. But as an introduction, you are really well known for your time in the military, specifically during the Berlin airlift. But let's go back before the military and talk about your younger years and how life was like growing up on the farm in northern Utah.
Well, looking back after being around the different parts of the world and looking back on how I was able to grow up, and the farm was a wonderful way to set a person's values. We had responsibility. We had chickens, we had pigs, we had horses, cows, and they all needed care. And my dad taught me at a very early age that you take care of animals because they need help. And appreciation, gratitude. Without the horses, we didn't have a tractor or anything fancy like that. But without the animals, we'd be hard put to make a living. So appreciation, I think, is one of the values that I learned at the feet of my parents. Appreciate things, be grateful for it. And the cause and effect, if you don't get the crop in, if you don't prepare, if you don't water it, it's a process. Life's a process. You have to apply an effort to get a result that you need. And if you don't do your part, the results are not going to be there to help you when you're hungry or when you're tired or if you don't fix the roof on the barn, hay's going to get wet and now middle of winter they won't have enough to eat. Anyway, cause and effect, and basically what the farm taught me. So I look back at it, gratitude.
You talk about gratitude, but did you ever feel deprived growing up on the farm? Like you had to work so hard and you didn't have a lot of freedom. Did you ever want to get away from the farm life?
Yes, but my parents were very careful to help me understand that not all people around the world had enough to eat. But gratitude for what you have, and it's one of the main values that I appreciated.
And you were pretty excited to learn to fly and join the war effort. Why were you so anxious to participate in that? Well,
it gets back to the farm. We'd be down in the dirt. We raise sugar beets, and that's a killer. When it's very small, you have to thin them out 12 inches apart, the plants. Whole handles that long. You're bent over all day long, down in the dust and the dirt, and sun on your back, and up in the blue sky would come an airplane from Salt Lake City to Malad, Idaho, and fly by, and I'd start going, get back in the dirt. And then, unusual for a little town of Garland, we had the Sugar Beet Days annual celebration. And we didn't have an airport there, but in Brigham City, there was an airport, and they had a couple of airplanes come up and flight demonstrations, aerobatics, and I holy cow, a farm kid, the most high-powered thing I had was a horse with a lot of spirit, and from a very early age. And then I must have been about in the, maybe the fifth grade, and I came across a book about a cowboy who was out on a ranch, a horse right down my alley. Very interesting cowboy experience. And one day he was riding the range and out in a big open place and found an airplane sitting there. And this old cowboy taught himself how to fly. I don't know where he got any material, but he taught himself how to fly that airplane. It was a story of what it was like of transitioning from a horse. It was a heck of an author. He's able to describe very vividly the feeling of breaking loose the bonds of earth, of getting in the air, being free. And I thought, wow, I don't know. I'd forgotten how old I was, maybe 12, 14, I don't know. But that book set me on fire.
If he can do it, then you can do it, right?
Yeah. This old cowboy doesn't know nothing about horses, just like me. That's a very pointed observation that comparative. Well, that guy can do it. Holy cow, I can do it. So first of all, it gave me a mindset of having confidence in myself. What I read about the cowboy, well, I can do that. I credit that book and that account as really setting my sights very early in life on interest in aviation.
So after reading that book, you have this strong desire to learn to fly. But being a poor farm boy, how did you go about getting flying lessons and end up learning to fly?
Got out of high school, and just before the war, the country knew that we were going to be in trouble. We didn't have enough pilots in the Army Air Corps. We had a very meager Army Air Corps force. And so at all the universities around the country, they institute a civil aviation program where you train young men. They had a competition to get a private pilot license. And I just graduated in high school and I joined that program in Utah. It was a very early program across the United States. And then at the end of that, we took a test for a pilot license. And then they gave 10 scholarships in the state of Utah for a private pilot license. And I competed for that and got one of the scholarships in Utah. And that's how I got started. I got a private pilot license before Pearl Harbor. And then I knew that when Pearl Harbor came, I knew that I'd want to be in the air arm. So after we got our 10 flight scholarships, we put in $50 each and bought an airplane for $500. So 10 of us had an airplane at Brigham City Airport, a Piper 65 horsepower.
Wow.
Piper Cub. And we'd trade off. We flew a lot. And with war coming, all my high school buddies wanted to know how it was to fly. And they'd buy gas. I had no money for gas. Took all the money I could to buy the airplane.
Yeah.
So they'd buy all the gas. And boy, I'd fly every moment I could. I'd fly the airplane, give them guys, show them how to do it and let them fly it in the air. And I couldn't teach them how to fly. Of course, I just got a license. But that really launched me. That really got me started.
That's neat. So you were able to fulfill that dream of flying, and you joined the military, and you became involved in what was known as the Berlin Airlift.
Yes.
Talk about what that was.
Well, after the war, Russia wasn't through with their ambitions. They had their own countries in Europe. They were expanding. It was their national policy. And then there was an opportunity for them. They came out very strong during the war and after the war. And they headed west. They wanted to go further west, go to maybe as far as England even. And so what was in the way? The thing that was in the way was West Berlin. At the end of the war, Germany was cut up in two halves. East Germany was presided over by the Soviet Union. They occupied it. They had half of Germany. And the West Germany was under the British, French, and American control. And in the middle of the Soviet control was Berlin. Berlin was located in the Soviet sector. And here it was, deep, 110 miles deep inside of Soviet East Germany, an island of freedom, the British, French, and American sectors. And so all East Germans, you can walk across the border anytime. There's no border. And they'd come across the border and see the difference in freedom and communism. Mm-hmm. It was a showcase. People were free to choose what they wanted to do. They were given opportunities. You lead. You govern yourself. We'll help you. And the East Berliners walk across the border. East Germans will walk across the border, go home at that night and say, boy, if that's freedom, we want some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. That was the problem. They were losing control. And they said, well, we shouldn't have these guys behind our border anyway. It was a mistake to sign that treaty. Mm. And so they said, all we got to do, all the food, everything that came in on the ground to Berlin, across East Germany into Berlin, would come on the Autobahn of the rail system, trucks and trains. So that's easy. All the supplies, all the food and everything for West Berlin would come across East Germany. Mm. We'll fix that. We'll just cut off the road and the railway. Right. But in the treaty, the Allies required that we have air access as well. And they signed it. But the only way you can fly over East Germany is stay within 10-mile wide corridors, air corridors, 3 of them. And if you stay in there, you can fly over East Germany and help supply West Berlin. So they had control of the ground, and it wasn't written they had to give us ground access. Mm-hmm. So they just chopped it off. Well, General Tanner, the genius of air power and air supply, said, well, we'll fly it in. We got it right. We're going to do it. President Truman led the way. Said, we're not going to leave you, West Berliners. Don't panic. We're going to feed you by air. Mm. Stalin said, oh, that's a joke. 2.5 million people. Never been done before. Famous killer words. Never been done before. Killer words. Well, anyway, my girlfriend, Alda Jolly, met Logan at Utah State just before I went in the military. Well, we weren't writing really friendly letters, and so I said, I just as well be over there. I wasn't asked to, when the call came, I wasn't on the list. I was in Mobile, Alabama, flying foreign transporters to South America. Mm. But I said, well, I just as well go over there. And I wasn't very happy with them anyway, because they had, in Tremont, Conrad Steffen was my best buddy. And when the war broke out, he signed up for pilot training. I got him started flying. And he joined the Army Air Corps, and the Germans shot him down, killed him. So I had to overcome that. Mm. Now it was a switch. That was a major decision in my life. I knew that Hitler was the guy and not the German individuals. I separated them, and then I knew too that what military training has, every month we'd have a special pilot meeting. And we knew what the Russians were doing. And those 2 motivators. So that's how I ended up going on the Berlin Airlift. Wasn't supposed to go.
Well, I think you make a really important distinction when you talk about separating the people of Berlin from Hitler and not see them. Because during the Berlin Airlift, you were helping a former enemy, but you didn't see them as such. You saw them simply as someone in need and as human beings, just like you and just like me, and you were willing to help them.
They were human beings that had the same desires and that I had, and the contrast right then was Berlin was a showcase of freedom.
Right.
And I thought I just wanted to help.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to fly over Berlin during that time for the first time and see all that devastation.
Oh, it was a clear day, and about middle of the day, came over Germany on the way, but I wasn't prepared what Berlin was. Mm. I didn't see one building that was intact. The fingers, the frames, the walls, nothing in between the walls. I just came over that first day, and it was a clear day, and I just see the buildings going by with no roofs. And,
wow.
It was unbelievable, and then to think in the framework of that kind of living, where people were living in a terrible situation, and then to cut off their food, it just, I just couldn't wait to keep going. And when I first got there, it was early in the blockade, and we were flying 3 round trips in 24 hours, and we go back to West Germany and go to bed immediately, and within 10 hours take off again.
Wow.
So 3 round trips in 24 hours at first was tough.
Wow.
But when we landed in Berlin, and the Americans had Tempelhof Air Base was the main base for us, and when we came into a land I had 20,000 pounds of flour on my first load. But it was a standard load, 20,000 pounds of flour for a 4-engine airplane. And pulled in, landed at the air base, destruction all over the place.
Wow.
And here came the trucks, backed up to with ragtag Germans with whatever clothes they had left. And they opened the back door of that airplane, big back door, and in they came. They stopped and looked at that flour. And that was the only motivation we needed. They just look at that flour and back at us like we're angels from heaven. And every time they go out with a sack of flour, they'd look at you. That's all it took. Flying day and night. I only knew one person that complained about that. I lived in the barn, the attic of a barn in West Germany, in no quarters, and saw this old barn there, and the attic was clean, and my buddies and I took our bedding upstairs and lived in the barn, attic of a barn. We lived there for probably about 6 months before they got a place for us to live on the base. But that's the motivation. As I said, I don't know one person flying day and night. 31 of my Air Force buddies were killed feeding the former enemy. 39 of my British buddies were killed in crashes, and not one word of complaint.
Wow.
One of my buddies bombed Berlin during the war. Went back to a base in England, and his airplane shot full of holes. One of his crewmen killed. I said, how do you feel about this? After trying to kill you, now you're flying night and day for him. He says, it's a heck of a lot better to feed him than it is to kill him.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be back. That was the spirit that kept us going.
I think that's a true act of heroism, to be able to do that for someone who used to be an enemy, to see a need.
Yeah.
And I'm sure those people looked at you and your friends and others at that time as their heroes, as their salvation.
Well, that happens in River City, here in the States. The same thing happens if, say, perceive someone as an enemy. But if you've got a way to help them in some way, if you can get by the initial evaluation, which can be totally wrong, why it opens up all kinds of doors you didn't know about.
You had an experience on the ground where you see children behind this fence and you go up and talk to them and give them a couple of sticks of gum to share amongst themselves. And that kind of planted an idea in your mind of this candy bomb that we know of. Tell about that experience and how that led to the candy drop later.
Well, when we would fly, we couldn't go anywhere. We just went in the airplane and turn around and come back. But I had one day off. So I hitchhiked back to Berlin with a buddy of mine. All I had to do is, we had my uniform. My buddy was going to Berlin with a load of flour, and I just jumped on the airplane with him, no problem, a movie camera. And I wanted to get pictures of the approach. We came right down between the buildings. Before we landed, we're lower than the buildings. The runway was lined up between buildings. And I wanted to get a picture. It was a tough approach, and especially in bad weather. So I grabbed my camera, jumped on with my buddy, and went to Berlin, and then went down the other end with the runway right next to a barbed wire fence all the way around the field to keep people from getting run over. And on the other side of the barbed wire were about 30 kids, 8 to 15, 16 years of age, holding on to barbed wire right next to the uniform. It was killing them. a few years before. And they were friendly. Why are they friendly? Well, they're aunts and uncles, cousins, living in the Soviet sector or in East Germany. And they would tell them, before you guys don't want anything to do with these Soviet guys. The question was, how many sacks of flour you got? How many times you come? And not once was there any acrimony or looking at the uniform was killing their family. And that was the healing wounds of war, was by service to others, by giving service. And that's the same formula you have for everyday living, right here or anywhere. Same formula. If you want a good relationship, it's possible. It takes work. So that those kids, not one, by voice inflection or body language, triggered, don't you know kids like gum, chocolate? You got chocolate. Not one. I never, ever got that prompt. And I'd flown in Europe after the war a lot. And the kids we walked down the street in West Germany. The kids would chase you, easy touch American. Give me some chocolate, give me chocolate. But not one kid broke that protocol. Gratitude. How powerful is gratitude? But not one. And I said, boy, I'd like to give them something. And all I had reached my pocket. All I had was 2 sticks of gum. I looked back at the kids and they were staring at me. I had my hand in my pocket. I said, boy, there's going to be a fight. There's going to be bloody nose, little girls, right, mixed up with them. I took my hand out of the pocket and they looked. And I said, well, it's up to them. No doubt the Holy Ghost just says, give them what you got. It wasn't me. And I broke it in half and boy, they just came out. And passed that half stick through the barbed wire, 2 little girls and 2 boys, and here came the rush. But not one child tried to grab it away from the little girl. You just honored them, and they asked something, and it was obvious soon what that was. The kids didn't get any on the piece of wrapper. The kids would have a stick, tore off strips of wrapper, passed it to the other kids, and they put up their nose and smelled it. Their eyes got big when they remembered what it was like. And they stood there dumbfounded, smelling a piece of wrapper. And not one pushed or tried to grab it from a little girl. And I said, wow, what a lesson in courtesy. And war turned ruins around us, and that kind of human reaction. About that time, an airplane came over my head and landed, and I thought, wow, I'm going to be here 3 times, and I'll be this close to them tomorrow, just above their heads. And I said I could drop it out of the airplane, give enough for all of them to share it. Then a red light came on. You can't do that against regulations. And I flew by the book. I got promoted because I was one of the pilots they could trust to fly like they told to fly. And I said, boy, I haven't got time. I'll never see these kids again. And they may never be back. So I said, I broke the rules. I said, you come back here tomorrow, stand in that open place, just behind the barbed wire fence. I'll drop enough chocolate and gum for all of you to have some. One condition, you got to share it. We share it. Translation went by. Most kids spoke English, but translated the others. And boy, when the translation got finished, they'll say, jawohl, we'll share. And I said, okay, then I'll be there 3 times for the next 24 hours. I don't know when. And they said, well, wait a minute, we got to know what airplane you're in. Every 5 minutes, an airplane landing here. We can't be watching every airplane for a little package out of the sky. We got to know what airplane you're in. And then I'm going back to Garland when I got a flight scholarship and got my first flight, my first solo flight. I got to go over Garland out of Brigham City. And I flew over the house, and Dad was out in the farm with a sugar beet cultivator with the horses. And I gunned the engine a little bit, and then wiggled the wings, and waving goodbye, and went back to Brigham City Airport. So I said, you can see that when we come into Berlin, we come over the field and come around and land. And when I come over the middle of Berlin tomorrow, I'll wiggle the wings of that big airplane like I did the airplane to show my buddy that was me flying the airplane out in Utah. I'll wiggle the wings. Just watch that one. And they said, great, wonderful. Get out of here. Let's start this thing. And so I couldn't buy much chocolate and gum. It was rationed from military. You only buy so much a week. And I had 3 kids that were looking forward to it. So I went to my co-pilot engineer. I said, give me your ration. What are you going to do, buy a camera on the black market? I said, no, I'm not. This is what I'm going to do. He says, you're going to get us in trouble. And I said, well, I'll take responsibility. Just give me your ration. So they did. I had a double handful of chocolate bars and some gum. It was pretty heavy. Boy, hit him in the head with that going 110 miles an hour, I'll make the wrong impression. It was a bomb. And we said, boy, we've got to put parachutes on this because it's a problem. So we put 3 or 4 candy bars on a parachute, not too many, so we spread it out more, and some gum, and then we had to figure out how to tie it. So we were in this old barn in the attic. I'd tie up some candy bars on a parachute and throw it out the barn windows, see how to fold it, because it had to open fast. Somebody saw me doing that. I said, what are you doing, Halvorsen? And I says, oh, I just used to do this as a kid for entertainment. And so we did. We wrapped them up, and we only had three big packages. And the first trip was at night, and so we didn't do anything. The next day, it was about forenoon, and it came over a beautiful day. Came over the top of it and looked down there, and there was those kids right on the fence. See them just as we came over. And we wiggled the wings, and boy, they just blew up. Then they were under, so couldn't see them anymore. Turned around, came back, and then we were flying the airplane. So on the C-54, there's a flare chute. It's like a stovepipe. Comes out of the flight deck. And you get in trouble at night, you can put a parachute with a flare on it and drop it, and you land in the farmer's field instead of in his house. Mm. So it's right handy. And so we came over there, and the crew chief, there's 3 men on a crew, co-pilot, a pilot, and the flight engineer sitting between the 2 pilots. And he's sitting right over that flare chute. So I just came over the fence and said, shove it out right now. Hey, pushed it out. We didn't know where it went. We were worried that it went into the airfield behind the fence. And we worried more than that if somebody had seen it. So we taxied back to the takeoff point to take off. And there with all the kids lined up on the barbed wire fence, by the fence, waving 3 handkerchief parachutes at all the airplanes. They're waving like crazy. Says, holy cow. We waved back to them. Says, they don't know who you are. And don't tell anybody. I said, we won't tell anybody. And so that's how it started. So we made 3 drops, and then the third one was a problem. The word that got out was in the newspaper. Mm. And my Colonel Hahn called me up. Said, Halvorsen, I understand you've been involved in this thing. What have you been doing? And I told him. He said, don't you know you got to have permission to drop stuff out of airplanes? You have to do that with bombs, Halvorsen. What happened to you? And he says, well, General Tunner called me and asked me about it, the big 4-star general. And I didn't know anything about it, Halvorsen. Why didn't you tell me? And I says, I made a mistake, sir. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Well, the general says, a heck of an idea, eh? Tell him to keep doing it. And he said, but keep me advised. I want to know all the details. And so all my buddies started doing it. Word hit the States and the headlines all over the place. we documented that we dropped 20 tons from the sky. We took 3 tons. The kids in the hospitals wrote, says, they're driving us crazy. We can't get out of the hospital. And the kids are getting all this stuff and we don't get anything. So I took 3 tons over a period of time and have it delivered with the Red Cross to the hospitals in West Berlin.
So it came from more than just the rations of the pilots.
Oh, yeah.
It came from all over.
The hires, candy company says, how much this stuff can you use? All the candy companies, Lifesavers, Babe Ruth. It wasn't a candy maker that was willing to give us all we could drop. But we didn't have time to, we're flying day and night. We couldn't tie up the parachutes. So Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts, schools there, the head of the school says, Halvorsen, you got a problem tying up parachutes. We'll tie them up for you and send the stuff to us. So the schools in Chicopee, Massachusetts tied up 20 tons of chocolate bars.
It's so neat.
And with the parachutes, had a big cardboard boxes all rolled up properly. All we had to do is cut the top of the box out and chuck them out the escape hatch. We had a map of Berlin. So we had to quit dropping them on the end of the runway. There's too big a crowd, kids get hurt. So we dropped them randomly. We had a big map in base operations, and I kept it up to date. We put pins in where we made the last drop, and we distributed it all over the city, including the kids in East Berlin wrote. So we can't help it. We're over here, the Soviet guys. We sure don't have any candy bars. And we're getting some of that stuff. We're going over to West Berlin, and we're getting some of that stuff, but not very much. There's a lot of German kids in West Berlin, too. And then the last paragraph, all these letters says, it's okay with us if you drop a niche over to us guys. And here's a map. Here's where the schools are. So I passed it out to the guys, and we started to drop them to East Berlin. And then I got a call from Colonel Hahn. He said, Hahn said, Halvorsen, what are you doing over East Berlin? And I knew I had trouble. I said, well, sir, we're dropping them communist kids. He said, you can't do that. And I said, well, I didn't say this. I thought this. I didn't say it. So the law of gravity is the same on both sides of the border. But he says, look, Halvorsen, you got to quit doing that. You know, I had to quit doing it. I had to quit doing it because the State Department or military, upstairs somewhere came, you can't do that, Halvorsen. That's their border. That's their airspace, and you can't violate their airspace. And I understand that. And so the kids that write me letters were coming in like crazy. Had a whole team of people just answering the mail. And the letters at that point came from the kids. The East German kids had some great letters, how they appreciated it. When you stop dropping over here, it's a lot less crowded than it is over there in West Berlin. We're still getting some there, but it was so good when we got special attention. And I had to tell them it was politics. It was politics that caused it to happen. Well, that's how it happened. It went, like I said, 2 sticks of gum went to 23 tons.
23 tons of candy.
Yeah. Three tons delivered to hospitals, and the rest of it were dropped in the air.
Wow. Was it the candy and the food, or was it the hope that it brought the people that was more important?
Well, it was a symbol of hope. It was a connection. It was a connection outside that dreary world. Freshly wrapped, smelly chocolate bars against the devastation and the ruins of war. It was a symbol of hope.
I think you're right. It is that symbol of hope that it gave those people that got them through that time.
One of the commonalities in the mail that we received was a statement in various forms: "Without hope, the soul dies." Without hope, the soul dies.
Yeah.
He said that was hope. That was hope. But someday we'd be free. Someday we'll have enough to eat. So I don't know one person that complained. Only one person that complained about flying day and night, feeding the guys that tried to kill him. Some of my best buddies, like they killed my best buddy that I taught to fly. But thank goodness that human nature, the hope is, my hope today is that human nature can change.
Mm-hmm.
That we have enough good people that are do good things that there's change. Well, we have to have change. That's what the gospel of Jesus Christ is. It gives us hope. It gives us understanding of why we're here. The hope that if we do our part, we have relief from, if we have a difficult time in this life, we're sure that there's more to it than here and now.
Yeah. I want to talk for a minute about hope for some other people who are going through some very dark times in their lives. And I want to ask you about this. I've been concerned about the suicide rate specifically in the United States, going up and up and up. And for veterans, the suicide rate is quite a bit higher than the general public. What do we do for people like that who go through these very dark, difficult challenges and have thoughts of self-destruction? How can we give those people hope that you're talking about?
Well, they've got to see outside of the near term. You got to see beyond the fence. I think the immediate answer to that is difficult, but to me, they need some kind of belief in the hereafter. They need some kind of belief of why we're here to start with, the purpose of being here, and that this isn't all there is to life. That we are capable of being resurrected in the future at some time, but the understanding of life, to understand, to have within oneself inculcated into our being and into our thought processes that look, this isn't all there is. Mm-hmm. This is not all there is, and without that, it's tough. It's a hard situation to bring people to grips with, to bring into reality by improving their outlook on life and restoring their faith. Without faith and without hope, the soul dies.
Mm. Well, and you mentioned earlier too about talking about gratitude, forgiveness, and persistence, things like that.
The Burden Airlift reinforced the primary lessons I got as a child growing up. That attitude. Somebody said we can see 2.5 million people there. The professionals of the world laughed at us.
It's never been done before.
The Russians laughed at us. You know, these guys are going to fall on our face. 2.5 million people, nobody's ever done it before. Nobody's ever fed it up. They're just going to waste the resources and fall on our face. Attitude. The General Tenor said, we can do it. If you say you can't do it, you're not going to do it. You've got to have a positive attitude, gratitude. If you're grateful, it opens you up, your sensors. It opens up your whole sensing process, how you see the environment. And if all you see is bad stuff or the things, that's their problem. Attitude. It opens up qualities in yourself of leadership and ability you don't know you had. Attitude, gratitude, and service before self. Savior's example of getting outside of yourself. Why is the Dead Sea dead? Gets all the fresh water and holds it, wraps its arms around it, and gives out nothing. Turns to salt. Have you ever seen Dead Sea souls in the United States? What's in it for me? I'm not going to do it until I find out what's in it for me. Mm. Without inspiration, without guidance, it turns to salt.
That's good. And you're still serving today. You still do the candy drops?
Oh, yeah.
You still go fly?
We're still doing them all over the place. And the American kids got a jar full of candy home, but there's nothing like a chocolate bar coming out of the sky. They look like the Berlin kids. They run just as fast as the Berlin kids did. And they got a house full of chocolate. Wow. So it's magic. It's magic to see a parachute coming out of an airplane, whirling around as the wind blows it, and the kids running like mad to pick it up. Even the American kids running just as hard as the German kids did.
So many good lessons. Thank you so much for taking time to share your wisdom and your stories with us today. I know I'm a much better person after sitting here talking with you.
Well, thank you.
And I hope I'm as spry as you are at 97.
Well, I've been blessed. I've been blessed. A wonderful wife, Alda Jolene, Zion National Park, and 5 wonderful kids, and a whole bunch of grandkids and great-grandkids.
How many grandkids do you have now?
Grandkids, we've got 24, over 50 great-grandkids.
Wow.
And they all know about what the kids in Berlin were like, and having me go a little bit easy on chocolate bars.
Well, thanks so much for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you've been inspired and motivated to go out and live life to the fullest. Colonel Halvorsen is a great man who's been able to accomplish incredible things in his life. But he started out on a simple farm in northern Utah, but simply had the courage to go out and do something that made a big, big impact on the world. I think all of us can do that. If we take those values that he talked about, service, gratitude, forgiveness, apply those in every aspect of our lives, and we'll be able to make a big impact on others as well. I also really liked when he talked about doing things that have never been done before. There will be a lot of naysayers saying, oh, you'll never be able to do that. It's never been done before. And then having the courage and the tenacity to go and do it. If you like this podcast, it would mean a lot to me if you'd share it, give it a rating, give it a review so it's easier for more people to find us. That would mean a lot to me. Well, it's a great day to be alive. There is so much to live for, and I hope that the message you heard today has inspired you to go out and live life more fully. A big, big thanks to Colonel Gail Halvorsen, and a special thanks to all of you who listen. I am Joe Belliston, and I look forward to sharing more stories of heroes just like you. God bless.